You're listening to the Optimal Performance Podcast. The OPP is brought to you by Natural Stacks, makers of 100% natural and open source supplements designed to help you live optimal. For more information on how to build optimal mental and physical performance into your life, go to naturalstacks.com. Oh, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Optimal Performance Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by Matt Maruca, who is the founder and CEO of Raw Optics. Raw Optics is a blue blocker glasses company. They make two different styles, one for the day, one for the night, and also they do custom blue blocking to prescription glasses too. But this episode goes a lot further than just blue blocking glasses. Matt Maruca is a pretty phenomenal dude. He's 19, and he joined me on Skype for a conversation. He recorded this thing outside with the sun beaming down on him. And you'll learn in the very beginning of this episode that he lived through the wildfires and was basically evacuated from his place. So we talk a little bit about that, reference that in the very beginning. But above and beyond specifically blue blocking glasses, we get into what he's calling the light diet, which refers to how to consume light, stare at the sunrise, stare at the sunset, and gives us some other fine points of how to optimize light for your body. We get into why diet and exercise is not enough, how sunlight specifically affects your health, the detriments around flying, which goes above and beyond just like time zone changing and Wi-Fi exposure, but stuff even as much as being, exposed to being above in a thinner atmosphere for an extended period of time. We talk about hacking circadian rhythms, which is pretty cool, and also this topic of deuterium. I'm really going to dive into this thing. It's such a fascinating concept. This amino acid, I believe it's called. I think it's amino acid, deuterium, that we eat foods high in deuterium, and it affects us really negatively. And this is like cutting edge biohacking stuff that is pretty fascinating. I'm going to follow up some other episodes to dive a little bit deeper into deuterium, but he's got a pretty good grasp of it, and he explains it really well. He also makes reference to a couple of other researchers and scientists like Dr. Barros, Dr. Wunsch, and Dr. Kruse that give sort of a background as to his exposure to light therapy and ketogenic eating and all that good stuff. You're going to love this episode. It's really great. He's a very cool guy, and we really had a fun conversation that's packed full of information. So you may want to grab a notebook and take some notes during this one. Don't take notes if you're on the treadmill. That'd be silly. And then, as always, I'd love your feedback. I want to hear more from you. I want to get some emails. I want to hear what you think about these episodes. Am I on track? Do you dig it? Do you hate it? Do you think I'm super dumb? Hopefully you don't. And as always, as I'm trying to do, and I've mentioned this the last couple of episodes, I'm trying to grow my personal tribe and also grow the tribe of the OPP. So if you are interested in getting free inspiration in the morning via text, send me your phone number. I won't call you, no problem. No, I won't bug you. I'll just send you a daily text message in the morning with something inspiring that has to do with hacking the mind, hacking the brain, hacking the spirit. I'm a life coach. I'm a professional development coach and a relationship coach, and I help people live the best possible lives that they can. The podcasting thing is just part of what I do. And if you want to get text messages from me in the morning, send me your phone number to my email, Sean, SEAN, at naturalstacks.com, and say, dude, send me those text messages. It's just to start your day in a productive and positive way. Again, no strings attached, but if you want to hear some information from me, send it over. Send me your phone number, and I'll start sending you text messages when I'm ready to do that. Also, if you want to go to chiefsformen.com and buy some awesome soap that the guys from Natural Stacks actually own and operate. I've been using the invigorating face wash in the morning, and it really does. It smells good. It wakes my face up in a really cool way. And if you use the code OPTIMAL on your first online purchase at Chiefs for Men, you get 25% off. As always, I aim to provide you guys with the best possible content. It is my purpose to bring you good stuff all the time. And I hope to provide you guys with a podcast that's a little bit different than the typical biohacking stuff. I'm going to be doing some personal development stuff also coming up soon, where you can get another perspective, because it extends beyond what you eat or not eat, fasting, tracking, hacking. I think that there's a great need for some deeper learning and some deeper wisdom. It's esoteric and mystical in nature. So keep a heads up for that, and keep listening. And also 5-star review on iTunes or Overcast or Stitcher or wherever you listen to this podcast. Comments always are appreciated. And one more thing before we jump into the podcast is a sick special offer. If you use code OPP at rawoptics.io, you'll get 10% off a pair of real dope blue blocking sunglasses. They're pretty cool. You should check them out. Thanks for listening. Love you guys. Without further ado, Matt Maruca.
You're listening to the Optimal Performance Podcast, and I'm your host, Sean McCormick. It's the OPP. I'm a performance coach, a wellness entrepreneur, a blogger, a speaker, a biohacker, and it's my privilege to bring to you the leading experts in the field of performance. So let's dig right in.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm Matt. I'm 19. I started this company a year ago out of a high school. The company is like dope, but the what I'm teaching people about, which I call the light diet, which I'm kind of working on a book about, is even cooler. So I'll talk about both, because the second one is more relevant to performance and recovery. The glasses are just one factor that helps out of like 6 things that are all really important that I'm pursue. But yeah, so.
Well, we're rolling, dude. I pressed record a little bit ago, so let's just jump right into it.
Thank you.
Let me start with this question, because I just saw you eat an orange, and I've seen the pictures with Luke's story.
Wildfire, man. The tree was half burnt.
Oh,
I'm serious, dude. There's because the ranch where I've been staying, it has a whole shit ton of grapefruit trees, persimmon trees, orange trees, dude. And I didn't know oranges were a winter fruit until last year. I was in Mallorca, Spain, and this woman was like, yeah, actually oranges are a winter fruit. And apparently people who eat them in summer, they did a study a while ago, had higher rates of some issue. I don't know. I don't know where the study is, or someone could look it up. But oranges are actually they ripen in December, approximately speaking. So I'm cool with eating fruit in season. And so because I'm otherwise eating a ketogenic diet, but I had these oranges, how am I not going to eat these fresh oranges that survived the wildfire?
Right.
Dude, when I went back to that place, I had to go through 3 different cops for them to let me in, because it's still blocked off this one area in the hills. It's the Santa Monica Mountains, just north of Malibu is where I've been staying. It's 2,000 feet above sea level, but 15 minutes from the beach. And dude, it was so burnt. It's unbelievable. If you go to anyone goes to my website, mattmaruca.com, mattmaruca.com, it's my Instagram feed is on the homepage. So you can see all the photos, and it is unreal. Dude, these hills that used to be covered in green brush are black and brown and clean. It's crazy. But it was so silent. All the neighbors' houses burned down, and my little place survived. And I was just picking oranges off of a tree with a little orange picker. It was the most serene experience ever.
Wow.
But the point is there are some grapefruits even that the fire was so close to them that half the grapefruits were singed brown, but they're still totally good to eat and so on. It's pretty funny.
Oh, that's cool. Those are special citrus that you were able to pick, dude, man.
Super special citrus. So that's it's a funny story, really, really funny story. I have a massive amount of them, and there's still tons more back there. So yeah, but the question about oranges and so on.
Yeah, the question that I ask, the first question I ask each of my guests is, what have you put in your body today? You said, I know you to be an experimenter and a biohacker, and I'm going to ask you about that term too. Posing with Luke's story and Wim Hof, but what's in your body today, Matt?
What have I put in my body today?
Yeah.
So I would tell you differently than most. I put in full spectrum sunlight from the moment the sun rose through my eyes and skin. And I put in oxygen from the air, and then I just put in some hydrogen in the form of starting with like a breakfast right after the sun rose, because that's like it stimulates the gastric reflex. So I am a fan of fasting from what I've learned, but I'm going to mention Dr. Jack Kruse a lot because he's like one of my bigger mentors. And then the researchers he's led me to also likewise are very, very influential guys who I'll mention. But he turned me on to the importance of breakfast in like stimulating our circadian rhythm. And there's a lot of studies about the importance of it. So I think this intermittent fasting thing is dope because it's totally like, I think, a natural thing. Although there's some people who claim that it's actually not healthy. I would disagree based on what I've felt and know. But I would recommend people intermittent fast in the evening. So like eat a breakfast and then maybe a lunch or late lunch or something, but fast from like 2 until 6 a.m. So that's 16 hours. 2 plus 6 more hour, that's 12. 2 to 6 a.m. 2 p.m. to 6 a.m. or like 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. I guess. But I would say like time it so that your 16 hours goes right up to when the sun rises, and eat your next breakfast at sunrise. And that way, like, we're not eating late in the evening, because there's a lot of evidence that disrupts sleep. Like anyone who has an Oura ring now, which is like all the rage, can tell you that if they eat late, their sleep score goes down. So like that, and that was like definitive proof for me after like all the studies that I had read when I have the CEO of Oura and I interviewed him for a podcast, and he's telling me like they know that if they eat, especially carbohydrates, but really anything, their sleep gets worse according to the score, which like, measures all kinds of variables. So anyway, intermittent fasting, cool. Skipping breakfast, not as cool, but not the worst thing ever. But eating late in the evening, not cool. So
interesting. Yeah. That's the first time I've heard that, and I know that your focus, a lot of the work that you do is centered around sleep and recovery, and if light is affecting your sleep, if food is affecting your sleep, specifically carbohydrates. That's interesting because I've not heard that. And I've been doing intermittent fasting and eating keto. I'm sort of 80-20 keto, and I've been that way for, 3 or 4 years. And it's been super effective for me. But we'll get into sleep for sure, because there's lots I want to talk about. Well, tell me, you're a fascinating guy. I mean, I'm sure you're sick of hearing that, but like started a company in high school, and your style and the way that you move through this world is unique and inspiring, and I'd love to know. I'd love for you to share sort of the origin story for how it was that you came to launch a blue blocking sunglass company.
Yeah. I was just on another podcast yesterday. I find that every time I tell this story, it just changes a little, and I'm always trying to make it a little better. But I'll say that I'll try to put it in the simplest form possible, and then maybe elaborate where you think it's best to elaborate. But basically, I was growing up, and I was sick, and I didn't feel well, and I had various issues. The issues I won't even name at this moment. But then I tried a lot of things to try to get better. And the main thing was diet, after all of the standard protocols that are out there, like Western medicine, then alternative, like naturopathic medicine, and that kind of thing. And even paleo functional doctors with all the herbal testing and gut bacteria rebuilding and very strict diets. And I tried the paleo, from paleo keto to autoimmune protocol paleo to higher carb paleo to the GAPS diet, which is like strictly bone broth paleo for autism, like kids with autism and stuff, which I didn't have, thankfully. But I was trying to heal my gut because I had thought that was maybe the cause of the issue when I started to dig really deep into my research freshman year of high school after these things didn't work. And none of these things like solved my issues. Like the paleo diet made me feel significantly better for the first time in my life. So I was like, light bulb, this is pretty cool. This might actually work. But then it didn't work all the way. And I was really, really depressed and lost. So I went even like lower than I had been before. Cause like I went from just ignorance and not being able to do anything, but like not knowing that I could, to like knowing and believing that I could do something, but not knowing what to do or how. which was really, really challenging and depressing and everything. But I learned about this guy, Dr. Jack Kruse, who I mentioned, who elucidated me, or opened my eyes, I should say, to the possibility of something further than just diet and exercise for health. And from there, I went on a foreign exchange program in Eastern Europe for a year and applied all of these protocols that I had learned from him. But not just that, I'm proud that I got to see a foreign culture through the eyes of someone with this perspective, which is a really uncommon perspective. So I got to see this culture that was like Dr. Kruse tells people you should ideally, if you have health problems and you can't solve them in your current environment, because he believes it's related to sunlight a lot of the time, like not just a lot of the time, most of the time. So if you can't improve your condition because you live in Seattle or somewhere with no sunlight, again, I'll explain more of how this works. He recommends you might need to actually move. And that's hard for people to like fathom, because like everyone wants the easier answer, but like biophysically, when you start to understand it, like you might actually not have enough sunlight to heal yourself because you're so deficient for so many years. But some people don't want to hear that, but it's fine. But so I actually did move to an environment, didn't have much more sunlight, but it had way less of this EMF stuff that you and I were chatting about a little earlier on, like all this wireless radiation. For people who think this is a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff, it's okay, because we both like conspiracy theories here, but it's not. There's lots of studies and books. I can mention that a little later on. That's probably a really important subject to actually knock on, so I'll jot a note down. But essentially, I applied these things in that better environment, which was like back in time, 20, 30 years, because Bosnia and Herzegovina is a part of the former Yugoslav republics. The only people who are listening to this who have probably ever gone to Bosnia are former military guys, for sure. And I bet there'll be at least one guy who listens to this who's ex-military, who was in Bosnia in the 90s, like fighting the Serbs and all this stuff. And I lived with a bunch of Serbs, the people who are seen as the bad guys. That's besides the point. It was a really cool historical experience. But the key thing is that they're back in time as far as the way they live, the way they eat. They walk outside a lot more. I mean, they still have cell phones and Wi-Fi and all this stuff. They're still like a European country, Western European country, more so than like a Middle Eastern type of country. But it's just the way they do things is a little further back. Like they don't have factory farms. All the milk is like, and meat is from local people in the country or in the Balkan region. So basically, that was like a pretty huge change, and I got a lot better. Then I came back home to my senior year of high school and started feeling a lot worse again, and like couldn't figure out why until I started realizing this. I met this guy, Dr. Kruse, in person that year, so after 2 years of applying the work, and then he told me the most counterintuitive thing I could ever imagine, which was focus on yourself and not on saving everybody else, which is what I was all obsessed with, which was holding me back from actually getting better myself. And I started doing that senior year and focused on how I could make some money with this stuff, because I knew I needed to make a living. The question is basically, if I was a wild animal, like I would go out and get my own food, my own water, and build my own shelter. But today, unless you want to go on like federal like property off the grid, like the guy in Into the Wild did, and survive, and he didn't do too well, obviously, but doesn't mean you couldn't, but you pretty much got to play into the economic system somehow so you can get currency to buy your food, water, and shelter. And so I was like, okay, how can I get people to give me their money and provide them value, and eventually the company kind of just emerged. I mean, it didn't just emerge. I thought for a long time about several options, tested the waters. And I was landscaping the summer after my senior year, planning on taking a gap year to travel, making some money. But then this kind of just started up when Luke Story, who we mentioned, asked me how he could get some of these red tinted lenses like the ones I had that Dr. Kruse was talking about on his podcast. And then I actually just tinted the lenses for him because I knew how to do it. And then from there, I realized, oh, wow, actually probably a lot of other people would want this. So I was the first person, proudly, I could say, to offer the top level technology, the 550 nanometer light blocking tints in stylish, attractive frames as a service, as a business. Because otherwise people had to go to their opticians, pay like sometimes upwards of $300, $400, $500 to get it done custom. And now there's several other companies following. Like Swanee's was there before. Swanee's blue blockers you may have heard of. their lenses only block up to 480 nanometers, which isn't even all of the blue range and doesn't really touch the green range of light, which also affects our melatonin. You'll see articles coming out about that more and more, that it isn't just blue blockers, but green light you also want to block. So I call them artificial light glasses, just to distinguish from sunglasses. They're actually designed for artificial light. And within that, some people call them computer glasses for day, sleep glasses for night. But yeah, that's pretty much the story. So
awesome. All of the good stories with people who decided to make a difference and be of service to others started in the same way. You know, like I was going through a thing, and it was pissing me off. I wanted to try to figure this thing out. I tried a bunch of different things. I made some headway. I opened my eyes to this new way of being that's a little bit counter to what everybody thinks is normal or okay. I tinkered around. I found something. It caught fire. People dug it. And here I am. And I'm just sort of riding this flow state of helping myself first and then helping other people and making a life out of it. I think, I can think of countless other doctors and authors and entrepreneurs that I've talked to on this podcast that have, sort of that same N of one experience where they found a way to create value for people based on a need that they experienced, and bada bingo, here we are doing a podcast and you're sitting in the sunshine with your shirt off.
Yeah, exactamente. So the interesting thing is that I would even tell you, honestly, like truly honestly, that right now my main concern isn't to help other people. That's like not the bottom of the list, but it's lower on the list than a lot of other things. And that might sound like counterintuitive because like we're in this society where it seems like the number one goal that's touted today, and I'll explain where I'm coming from. The intention is still very good, but it's like in society, people put out I think most people, not everyone, puts out this idea that the best thing we can do is to help others. And from my experience, the best thing that ever happened to me that led me to be able to actually help others more was actually helping myself. So if I only did one thing with my life, it would be to shift this paradigm that everyone has today about helping others and make it about helping ourselves. Like that to me is even more important than the health material. And the reason why is because it wasn't until I met Dr. Kruse and he told me that, and I went from being obsessed with how everyone else was getting, harmed by the food companies and harmed by the cell industry that's microwaving everyone with cell towers. I mean, we're doing it to ourselves, but they are kind of not making it known, the effects, even though they know them. Like I just was meeting with a guy in Mexico who's a telecom executive who runs the second biggest fiber optic cable company in New York City, second or third approximately, just behind Verizon. He runs fiber into the ground, but he doesn't use he's another one of Dr. Jack Kruse's members and so on, who pays for that content, but he doesn't use the wireless stuff. He doesn't do that side of the business because he knows it's bad. So he has the solution ready when people realize, if they realize that if it comes out, I should say, that this stuff is really bad. He has a solution already lined up, like everything being hardwired, and even technologies that could really like make it work. Anyway, point is, he even said that he's gone to meetings with like CEO of AT&T, Verizon, and they don't use their phone to their head. They hold it in their hand and use a headset because they know. He said they know very well the research, and they're all just saying like, what the fuck do we do? But if the one CEO doesn't perform, he's going to get knocked off and replaced. And if the companies don't perform, everyone's going to lose their job and be broke and screwed. So like the fact is that if people would wake up and help themselves first, then we would be on the path to a solution. But right now, everyone's concerned about how to change everything else except actually fixing themselves. That's like, so yeah, like point is, helping yourself is the best way to help others. That's my view. Helping others alone is weak.
That's beautiful. Yeah, well said. I mean, be the change you wish to see in the world. The Gandhi quote, and it also sounds a lot like Ram Dass.
Dude, yeah.
Right? Like
funny story. Yeah.
Do the work. I do the work on me so that I can be better for you. And
exactly.
that is such a. I mean, and for myself, that rang true. I heard that at just the right time in my life, as
a business owner, as a father, as a podcaster, as a
Cool.
coach. I do. I'm a performance coach and life coach and relationship coach for high performing people. And if I can't bring it, if I can't take care of myself and be present and be sharp, I'm not worth a damn to you. Like,
there you go, dude.
Right?
There you go. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, like, before. I mean, there's definitely. I imagine there are people. Actually, I don't know. Was there ever anyone who really helped and changed a lot of things in a positive way that didn't have their stuff figured out to some extent first? I can't think of one. But like Martin Luther King, like, he had his mind straight, and he knew he had his will and his desires and his everything kind of straightened out. Like, he was willing to suffer and endure pain for his mission. And Gandhi and all Mother Teresa, it's like these people had things straight in themselves first. All of their karma was aligned, or whatever you want to call it. And I don't know if that's the right use of the word karma, but the message is still there. And then they brought it on. And then again, as it goes with the Ram Dass and the Gandhi quote, even Jesus, or in the Bible, Jesus said, "Love thy neighbor like thyself." So it just heard someone mention that one time, and their point was like, if you don't love yourself, how are you going to love your neighbor well? Like, that's maybe another interpretation of that line, but like, how can you love your neighbor more than you love yourself if you don't even have any love for yourself? So
if you have no frame of reference to have, to cultivate self-love, then it's inauthentic. If you're loving other people without loving yourself, then it's a show, it's not embodied.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually met someone the other day, or re-met this girl I had met in Los Angeles just at like some health event, like Luke Story was speaking at or something at Bulletproof Labs, just like a kind of friend. And just ran into her at like this grocery store, and this girl just kind of struck me as like pretty, I don't know if she'll ever listen to this, but she would not deny this. She's pretty depressed, all over the place, trying to figure things out. Nothing wrong with that, because that's part of the path. But the thing that struck me is, like, when I asked her, what she's trying to do, what she wants to do, does she have any, plans or whatever? And she just kind of was talking in a lot of generalities, very vaguely, about like how she can improve the community and how she can help others. And I'm like looking at this girl, I'm like, girl, you need to help yourself. Like, you ain't helping no one with where you're at right now. Like, if you're helping someone, I don't think it's going to be a positive version of help, because you have nothing to give.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I think of when most people talk about helping others. But I mean, doesn't mean like you can't, you could go volunteer for people who are like underprivileged, and that's great. But I just believe that the better we make ourselves, the way better everything overall is going to be.
Totally agree. And in my world, sort of new thought, new age, because I in my meditation practice and owning float centers and traveling to do ceremonies and being in that deep community of spiritual transformation. There's a lot of folks who think that that's what they're supposed to say, and that is what they want to do. They do want to help their community. They do want to make a difference, and they're detached from it. It's sort of, there's a lot of folks, and this is not a judgment. It's just, it is what it is. But if they're so concerned outside of, they want to help in such a way, but they're putting the cart before the horse, and their heart is in the right spot, but their vision and execution is poor, and they are unorganized, and they feel deeply. And a lot of these folks, and I would assume that you too, and myself, have some empathic abilities, and it's part of what makes us who we are. And these sort of empaths that feel really deeply, these sort of intuitive practitioners, these people who are highly, highly sensitive, they want to help people first. They want to reach out and make a difference in their community, but they're
they're so concerned with making a difference that their life lacks certain execution and organization, and there's no easy answer to it because it comes with time, and it comes with practice, and it comes with having a morning routine, waking up, getting some vitamin D, getting some sunlight, focusing on your breath, making sure that the way that you live every day is actually conducive to you growing over time so that you can eventually help people. And that's why everybody should focus on bettering themselves first. Oh man. Well, we're on the same page on a lot of this stuff, my man.
Totally. Yeah. It's pretty cool. So yeah, there was one other thing that came up. Well, two things when I was talking just through my story that I should elaborate on. One is on the health effects of EMF, but that's kind of maybe a little later on. Another is about why, like I mentioned, why diet and exercise aren't enough, and the actual protocols that I actually did that got me better beyond diet and exercise related to why someone might actually need more sunlight if they're sick. But I could get into that whenever it's right. But so what are the questions you kind of have in mind?
Yeah.
What do you want to ask?
Many. I know that an important part of the focus of what if blue blocking glasses are a mechanism or a tool, a means to an end, it's really about protecting mitochondria, right? Ultimately.
Yeah. Optimizing mitochondria.
Optimizing mitochondria.
Let's part this trash truck for one moment.
Yep.
Now it's gone.
And the connection between melatonin and mitochondria is important, as pointed out, in your literature. Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through? So our listenership is they're going to know this stuff. They're going to know they know what mitochondria are. They know the importance of melatonin. But,
really?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They're very sharp people. But it would be nice to know your take on it. On optimizing mitochondria and how it ties to melatonin, and working backwards how light and our circadian rhythms can either help us or hose us.
Yeah, what's really the most interesting thing I learned recently or put together recently is that a lot of molecules are influenced by the sunlight, by sun, and people who are interested can look up. And again, I'll be putting all of this into a book shortly, and so people will have a one-stop shop for it. But we'll have my, website in the show notes so people could look that up. But there's a guy named Dr. Alexander Wunsch, Wunsch, who is – it means wish in German. And he's a big sunlight researcher. And he basically – photobiology, so the way sun impacts life. And basically, he talks in some of his videos. The one that people can go on and look up on YouTube is called "Why the Sun is Necessary for Optimal Health." It's pretty cool. And then there's another on Vimeo called Photoendocrinology, which basically is like endocrinology, the study of our, what our endocrine system does with like hormones and so on, like the thyroid, basically. But photoendocrinology, the way it's impacted by light and driven by light. And basically, the why the sun is necessary for optimal health is more basic in general. But if you want to understand some shit, I would watch photoendocrinology. You'll go nuts. And then all the ones on his Vimeo page are insane, like the changes in lights and how it's related to the increase in disease and so on. His slides are so good that Dr. Jack Kruse actually takes his slides and uses them in his PowerPoint talks because they're really that good. And I'm going to take some for a talk I'm giving in Los Angeles this weekend with Dr. Kruse and Luke Story and some other folks. But basically, he shows how sun causes things like serotonin and melatonin to be created from precursor amino acids, like through our eyes and the light that's captured in that way. And same thing, not just with these hormones, but there's a chart, actually, a really, really cool picture chart that I'll even try to pull up so I can list off some of the names. But the biggest ones to note are how basically melatonin is converted from serotonin, and serotonin comes from tryptophan. Dopamine is created from something called tyrosine, and all of these molecules, tryptophan, tyrosine, and so on, are initially they're energized so that they can convert by UV light from the sun, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to see this because I want to actually share all of these if possible. So yeah, other things like, for example, beta endorphin, that's another one that is created under the influence of the sun. That's like our internal opioid. So the sun, like we're literally rewarded with like basically heroin inside of our body, not exactly, but similar to be in the sun, which makes you wonder if it's so bad for us, why is there like an opioid response for being in the sun? There's other molecules like testosterone, and a lot of these kinds of things are really important. But the point is that basically the sun, from what I learned, is like the powerhouse, the kind of the push, the energy that comes from nature. And these molecules, given their structures, actually capture sunlight. And they're like sunlight's little messengers that go to the different spots in our body to impact different things. So like you get a ton of sun, and then melatonin stores that energy and then actually goes and releases it and uses it in the repair processes of the mitochondria. So it's pretty interesting how that's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that's the most scientifically accurate description of how it works, but it's a pretty kind of, if you understand the work of Dr. Wunsch and Dr. Kruse, it's actually pretty spot on. It's pretty close. So, yeah, and like I'm not a PhD researcher, so that's not who you're listening to, guys. If you're looking for that, go listen to Dr. Kruse or Dr. Wunsch. But I'm making it so that you can understand it a little better, basically. So that's how the sun affects the body and these hormones basically through our eye and through our skin, which is why people should not wear sunglasses or contacts. And at the end of this, or towards the end, I can run people through the few key steps that they need to be doing to get the benefits of these things. But you don't want to be wearing sunglasses or contacts, and most importantly, you want to be getting the sunrise. Like you have to go somewhere with a little bit of a horizon, like space, whether it's the ocean, a lake, a river, or just a field, a bay, a marina, or just somewhere where there's a bunch of space between you and where the sun's rising. So you could get that initial color change from like orangish, reddish to more yellow as it rises, and that'll like turn on the brain and the hormones. And ideally, you want to spend as much of your time outdoors as possible, just like your working time and everything. And then if you can't, though, you do really want to get out in the middle of the day to get some vitamin D production, because you can't get your vitamin D early in the morning because the UV is blocked by the atmosphere that the sun has to pass through when it's coming on this angle. But as the Earth spins and the sun's more direct overhead, then the sun has to go through less atmosphere. So that's why UV, well, for example, right now in Seattle, since like October, you aren't able to make vitamin D anyway because there's not any UVB coming in. But in San Diego, where I am right now, it's just at the edge of the line where there's still some UVB in the middle of the winter, but not very much, and only in the peak of the day. But then if you go down just 10 degrees below like San Diego, or 13 degrees down to Cancun, which is where I just was for a month, and I'm going to be going back there really soon, then you get tons of vitamin D. So anyhow, as it relates to sleep and recovery, there's a whole another conversation there. But basically, when our mitochondria are repaired and everything's repaired under melatonin's impact, you'll sleep like a baby, you'll feel really great, and you'll recover and perform well. It's that simple.
Are you a 20-something snowbird? Like, are you? It sounds like it. Yeah, sounds you are, aren't you?
19-year-old snowbird. That is correct.
I mean, like, you mentioned it really early, but like, if the environment and the latitude, the longitude isn't serving you, you need to move. Do you shape your life and travel around, getting optimal sun exposure?
You bet I do, dude. It's funny, like I think about now, there's so many articles coming about, like one recently about American Airlines pilots. People can look this up, that they're getting all kinds of weird sicknesses and diseases and infectious diseases too, that people just can't explain. And a guy like Dr. Kruse actually, and I could explain it more or less as well, like when you're in the air off the Earth's magnetic field, you're being exposed to a shit ton of solar radiation, which is not good, because when you're under, like, the sun at 36,000 feet is not the same as the sun on the surface of the crust, because there's a lot less atmosphere up there. So humans have never evolved that high. I mean, like, even the Sherpas who live in the Himalayas, the highest they go is like 16,000 feet for regular living, and they only go up in summit because the rich, white people from the West pay them to do it, but they know it's not like somewhere to stay long term. Maybe it's like 15,000 feet. I'm pretty sure that's the highest that's regularly inhabited. And even then, their mitochondria have adjusted thoroughly. Their skin's very dark, if I'm not mistaken, so they can they're blocking more solar radiation. They're also have mitochondria that have adapted to utilize and function well with lower oxygen levels. So that's one issue at high levels. But the bigger one is that you're inside of a metal tin can full of Wi-Fi now, and there's a big antenna somewhere on the plane that's blasting down to the surf, or probably more likely up to a satellite, to get you your Wi-Fi in flight and connect you to your friend on your phone call. So this is how it is. I'm not going to say it's wrong or bad, but because wrong and bad are subjective. But if one believes that mitochondrial disease, which is affected significantly by these wireless radio frequencies and microwave frequencies that are used for communication now, is bad, then being in an airplane at 36,000 feet in a tin can with everyone else using their Bluetooth Bose headsets and everything is very, very bad. So this is just to answer your question, I'm thinking about going to Bali for all of February to visit a friend, right? And that's dope. But I'm considering not doing it because, and this might sound wild to some people, but because of the risk of being on a plane that long. I do it in a year because I've already been flying a lot recently, and I'm hopping from LA. I just came from Cancun to had a layover in Mexico City. Now I'm going to go back to Philly for Christmas, where my family lives. That's where I'm from. Even though people say I look like I'm from California, that's why I'm here now, but sort of. But then I'm going to go down to Cancun again for a month. So I'm moving a lot, and I'm just thinking, I don't know if I want the risk of the physical effects of a 6-hour flight to LA, a 15-hour flight to China, and another 6-hour flight to Bali.
Yeah.
So you have to stay minimum 1 month for it to be worth it.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate, because especially for someone like yourself who's young and energetic, and at 35 I think of myself the same way, because I take care of myself and I take care of my mind and my body and my spirit, and there's a lot of love in my life. But it's hard for lots of people to think in that way, because you're right. The Wi-Fi that we're exposed to, the electromagnetic frequencies that we're exposed to, most people aren't particularly sensitive to it and don't understand, or maybe not are not as affected. I had the sleep doctor on, for example, a number of episodes ago, and was talking about Wi-Fi and EMF during sleep. And I was like, I unplug my cable from the wall every night, and I've got shungite pyramids. Shungite is a Russian crystal that dissipates EMF. If you haven't heard of that one yet, I'm gonna send you some.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you it's probably not effective. But
all right, fair enough.
But you can test it if you get a meter. You can see if it's doing shit. And I've tested some of those things, and usually they're not. But
right, all right. So
I'll tell you which meter you need to get, and it's only $200. So.
Well, I need one for my infrared sauna that I use at night.
The meter's called I'll say it now, Cornet, CORNET, ED88T, and it measures radio frequencies, magnetic fields, and electric fields. And even this huge CEO tech guy I was mentioning to you, he loves it, even though it's only $200, because it's portable. It's this big, and it measures all these different fields. And it even has a sound function for your radio frequency, so you can hear it. So I was driving through the hills to the wildfire, and it was dead silent because all the power was gone and everything, which was dope. I was so stoked about that, even though it's usually low anyway. But every few seconds I heard which means there's some kind of radar thing spinning around, blasting me every 30 seconds, or a satellite beam. And then I started hearing really loud noise. I was like, that's interesting. And I look, temporary cell antenna that they just put up. So I had to call my mom because I didn't have service because I thought she might think I totally went off the grid because I called her before I got to the police barrier. And then they let me through and I lost my service. So I was like, shit, my mom's not going to, because she didn't pick up. But anyway, I was like, I could call my mom with the temporary cell antenna. It's just funny. The meter, like, really, it works once you learn how to use it and pick stuff up.
Okay, that's cool. That's a good one.
But yeah, so continuing with this guy, the sleep doctor.
So what he said was, some people have sensitivities to EMF. Some people are more sensitive than others. He's like yeah. I myself, like my wife goes to sleep with the TV on, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, bro. You're the sleep doctor, and your wife falls asleep to the TV on in your bedroom? That doesn't add up for me. And he goes, it helps her fall asleep. It's on a timer, so shortly after she falls asleep at her typical time of like 10:25 at night, it's off at 10:40. And anyway, he made the point that different people have different sensitivities to it. And I don't know if that's backed by great science or not, but in terms of the way that you choose to live your life and, not going to Bali because you don't want to risk 12 hours in the air, like that's a hard thing.
Actually, it's like 24 hours, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's a hard thing for people to rectify because A, they may feel lousy and jet lagged for a day or two, but it's Bali.
I'm going to go, just so you know. I'm most likely going to go. I'm just saying it's a real consideration.
Yeah.
But like, for example, I'll tell this on air, like I just flew back from Mexico. I mean, maybe this is just me, but it's not. I'm pretty sure it's not. But so I know that flight travel is like a circadian disruption, right? And I know that even if I do all these protocols that I'm talking about, right, the fundamental issue is this travel and circadian mismatch. So I just flew from Cancun, right? And I was reading in this book I'm reading recently called The Influence of Ocular Light Perception on Metabolism in Man and Animal. Anyway, it's an interesting book about all this light stuff, but it talks about how when people do airplane travel, their serum, well, it's all about all kinds of like, the book itself is about the way light influences our metabolism and our body through our eye and other animals. And the most interesting findings in the book are when people go blind, they have completely altered hormone levels all throughout the body. But if they remove the cataracts, if they can, in certain people the cataracts that make them blind, the UV light can pass through again and all their hormone levels renormalize. So it's crazy just because of the influence of light through the eye. It's really fascinating. But they mentioned, just as an anecdote, studying people who do like long haul air travel, like 6 time zone, 3-4 time zone change. And so the one thing they noted is that people's like blood levels of different excretion, their circadian excretion of hormones, like, in our body, we excrete potassium, sodium, and all these other things in different ratios, whether it's day or night and so on. It's very fascinating. But when flying, these things change. And that is intimately linked to our digestion, metabolism, and everything. And after reading that, I was like, I should really take note of changes that happen. And I realized that every time I fly, I kind of get constipated. That's what I was going to say, which maybe that's not the case for everyone. But the fact that here you are, you're saying I'm pretty young and healthy and so on. It took my body a week to readjust to that change.
Yeah.
Exactly how long the guy in the book found that it took for people's hormonal levels in their blood, the excretion of metabolites to change after flight, like about a week, sometimes longer. But so even in a young guy, that's something I'm noticing. And like most people might not notice. Well, they probably would notice that, but I actually probably had that issue. And I didn't feel noticeably different, thankfully, because I feel pretty great. But I knew that I wasn't like moving my bowels. I was like, that's kind of weird. I'm still eating a ton of food. But this morning I was totally good after a week. But the point is that like that might have happened many times before. But until I read the book and noticed and thought about it, I might not have noticed that. But here, to your point about me being young and energetic, I totally get where you're coming from. But the thing is, like, I might seem really young, healthy, and energetic right now. But 5 years ago, I was the most tired, sick, skinny, pale guy that I knew. Seriously, like my friends all are interested in this stuff, even though most parents that try to convince their teenagers about this stuff that I'm into, because there's lots of people who are into this who ask me like, can you talk to my kids? Like they won't listen to me. most kids won't listen, but my friends saw how I was before and how I am after. So to them, it wasn't even a question like, damn, obviously this shit works.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I want to look like him. I want to get in the sun. I want to have a tan. I want to like be strong without working out at all. I mean, I work out now a little bit surfing. That's about it. But the point is that, I'm looking in the long term. Like I was born or conceived in vitro, like a test tube baby, you know, and as they would say. So the thing is that means that the first 2 to 3 days of my existence, I was under artificial lights as an embryo in the most sensitive, vulnerable form. And maybe that isn't really a big deal, but the oldest in vitro baby is only 40 years old. Most people probably don't know that. So I'm half of that person's age already. So they don't, and that lady, by the way, if you look her up, she looks pretty shitty, pretty old and fat and old. Like for a 40-year-old, she looks really bad. So the point is that it doesn't mean that's because of in vitro. You know, she lives in England. Their diet and sunlight isn't exactly killing it up there. Looking fat, you know, overweight Englanders at the age of 40. But the point is that people really don't know how this, like, artificially putting together an egg and a sperm cell, especially two that were not selected by nature as the fittest, two that were just randomly pulled out of the mom, the dad, when he ejaculated into a cup, and the mom they took out of her randomly. None of it is natural. The point is, like, the effects of this aren't really known. So I'm looking at it not like, oh, I'm young and 19. I used to be. That's how I was about a year ago, until talking with Dr. Kruse and realizing maybe I feel great now, but maybe when I turn 30 or 40, things are going to fall apart much more quickly than they are in someone else who is naturally. And so that's why I think forward now. I'm thinking like, okay, I know I could take a 36. I know I could fly all the way around the world 2 days in a row and I'd recover and be fine, probably. But unless I got some really sick infectious disease and then died because my immune system was so trashed. But the point is, I'm kind of thinking in a mindset now, like, I know I can get away with flying like crazy. You know, I went to Europe last summer and the fall before that and flew like 15, 20 times in 2 months around all these countries. Whoa. But I'm looking at that now, like, I can do that and feel okay. But looking back on it, I was actually really irritable. And I was like, I felt okay, but I was irritable. I had these other symptoms. I probably was constipated too, but didn't even notice. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think forward, which I think is a good move for people today. Like,
it's hard for people to do that. It's hard for people to not only value and prioritize their health, whether it's associated with food or light or rest or stress or sex or whatever. But I think that it's important, to your point. It's important for us to be considering, maybe I should travel, 10 less weeks this year because it may be wrecking my gut microbiome. Like maybe I should consider reading a little bit more about a light diet and living in Seattle and finding ways to get more light in my life, because for now I'm good. Like I'm killing it. I'm excited. Everybody's happy and healthy at my house. We're good. It's cool. But at 35, looking 5 and 10 years down the road, these sorts of considerations, because there's more and more things to think about. There's more and more environmental factors that are screwing with our hormones. Like I don't drink tap water. My family only drinks spring-fed gathered water that I go down to like an artesian spring, and we've been doing it for a long time. And I really honestly think that has helped me keep an open mind, and it's helped keep me grounded. But that's a whole nother podcast. But
well, yeah, but no, that's related. That's actually one of the steps of the light diet that I'm going to be writing out is drinking good quality spring water. So that's awesome that you do that. And
yeah, it's important. It's important
really
to me.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's really cool. So, like I said, I mean, a lot of people might hear this and be like, "Oh, that kid's paranoid," blah blah blah. But the person who thinks that, they're not putting together 2 and 2 in their head that this kid isn't just like a young 19-year-old who is crushing it his whole life and doesn't have perspective. Like I'm a 19-year-old who was miserable, depressed, and even slightly suicidal when I was 14, 15 because I felt so bad with headaches, gut issues, constantly like allergies, and then just even like headaches was like chronic pain more or less. I was just like in pain. and it was not fun. And
Well,
anyhow.
For folks like you and I who grew up in more northern latitudes, Pittsburgh, Seattle, maybe Chicago,
Philly, yeah.
Yeah. Philly.
Yeah.
What are some things that people can do besides moving to Cancun to help to help nourish themselves with light?
So it's like standard. Typically, I mean, it's all the same things as I'm gonna get into. I might as well just mention them all. But basically, you want to be getting to start. I'll just mention all the steps of, let's say, the light diet, as I call it, and teach it, and then from there, these are all the same things, but I'll put in specific things that people in northern latitudes can do. But so basically, the first is going to be waking up in the morning and getting the sunrise, and then being exposed to the sun throughout the day. So if you're at a northerly latitude, you're going to basically need to go outside, even if it's cloudy, and just watch as the light goes from basically dark into light. That's really beneficial, just to be out and getting that, even if you're just on your deck. Because especially on a cloudy day like that, you don't need to go somewhere specific to watch the sunrise, because all the light's equally reflected all around because of the clouds. So you can just go out on your deck, or even just open your window, and that's a huge benefit. And you want to be outdoors during the day in natural lighting is the other step of that.
Question.
Please.
If I'm looking through my window out my back deck, is that the same as being outside? I mean, I know being outside getting fresh air is one thing, but you said like go outside or open the window. If I'm looking through the window, is that suboptimal?
Yeah. I know that's actually if the window's open, it's
closed.
fine. No, that's not good, because all the glass today blocks a lot of infrared and red light. So therefore, you're having an increased ratio of blue. So actually, even just window artificial or window natural light is still a blue light hazard relative to sunlight.
Wow.
But it's not nearly as bad as an actual artificial light bulb, but it's still not optimal. So another piece of that equation means trying not to turn on your artificial lights during the day in your house. Like, just try not to use any artificial lights. Just use natural light. That's a huge, huge benefit. Again, you can be near a window. You don't always have to open the window. If it's freezing outside, it's still better than having the artificial lights on. If it's between artificial lights versus closed window, pick the closed window. But if it's closed window versus open window, pick the open window. And if it's open window versus outside, go outside. But don't make it too hard for yourself. Like, just go to the window, even if it has, and crack it a tiny bit, and you'll actually let more of the full spectrum through. But don't trick yourself to think that it's as good as having the whole window open, or as being outside, letting it hit all over your face.
Got it. Okay, keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
The whole point is you actually interrupt me as many times as you can to actually do this. So that's like step one. Step two is drink good quality spring water and eat seafood. I should reverse to step one. Is like, the key thing about being outside all throughout the day is that, like I said, you get the sunrise, you get that turning on of your body, and you want to watch the sunrise 15 to 30 minutes until you start to feel it warm on your skin, which means UVA has come out. So like, that initial light stimulus turns on a lot of hormonal processes, and the UV hitting the skin turns off a lot of those hormonal processes. So basically, these are all things everyone should be doing, and they're all really easy. That's the thing. It's not a food diet. That's why I call it the light diet. That's my name for it, I'd say. And that's the title of the kind of upcoming book, basically.
It's a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, that's where the book's going to be headed. But basically, it's a focus. The thing is that this isn't as emotional as food. Like, in other words, where changing food is really hard for people, because like, you want your carbs, or you're attached to this or that, you want to be a vegan or not. The light diet is completely distinct from that. There's only one step related to food, which is now back to the other half of step two, which is drink good quality spring water and eat seafood. So if you wanted to go a little deeper, I would recommend people eat a seasonal diet, which I personally believe eating a meat and fat and seafood based diet is optimal. And this is something you can go watch Luke Story's podcast on deuterium with a guy named Dr. Laszlo Barros. Deuterium it's heavy hydrogen. It's basically, all of our food. Like I said earlier, when I eat an orange or my breakfast this morning, I never told you what my breakfast was. It was about a quarter pound of brisket with a side of sour cream. So it's a ton of meat and fat, because right now it's winter. I mean, again, it's still sunny here, thankfully, but there's not as much sunlight, which is part of how we get rid of this stuff called heavy hydrogen, which is the science name is deuterium. And basically food, ocean water, anything that has hydrogen in it. And just for people who don't know, when we eat food, this is why I told you I got oxygen from the air, and then I ingested hydrogen in various forms. I ate the protein of the meat, which I used to build up the body and all the structures. But the fat on the meat isn't used for building structures necessarily. We use it for energy primarily. I mean, some of like our brain and cell membranes, actually, we do use saturated fat and cholesterol to build them up. But also omega-3, which is another thing I'm just about to jump into. But the key thing of how we make energy is we take oxygen from the air. Or let me step back even further. People know, at least you know this, right? How does a tree make itself? Would you be able to tell me? Too much. But.
Photosynthesis? I mean, like, yeah.
So exactly, photosynthesis. So, but really, the actual, do you know where the hard material of a tree comes from? Like this little bit of this plant right here?
Well, it's growing from the inside out.
Yeah. But so basically the actual carbon that makes up, because this is just a sugar polymer, it's a bunch of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens wound together in tight chains that make up cellulose. That's what all the plants are, except the fruits are more like sugars. But it's all the same, whether it's a plant or the trunk of a tree. The trunk is just a bunch of small sugars wound together to make cellulose. But basically, that's just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So it's interesting. The carbon comes from thin air, from carbon dioxide in the air. And the hydrogen and the oxygen come from water. So basically the tree drinks water and breathes carbon dioxide from the air and actually builds itself from thin air and water, which is pretty dope, with the help of sunlight to split the water so that it can integrate it into a sugar. Now, the cool thing is that animals' niche on Earth, which is a supplementary or complementary niche, I should say, to photosynthesis and plants, is that we eat the plant and the sugars contained in the plant, the carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens, and we strip the hydrogen back off, and then we breathe the oxygen that the plant released into the air and put the hydrogen and the oxygen back together to make water. So they pull them apart and build these structures. We eat the hydrogen, harvest it off of the fruit or the animal that ate the fruit or the plant, and then we put the hydrogen and the oxygen back together, which releases energy, which allows us to make a living as an organism, which is really cool.
Yeah.
That's how like eukaryotic organisms remain energetically favorable to the universe, because you can't exist, well, at least like structures can't exist without energy. So we have to have there has to be some sort of energy source for us to be living. So anyway, the point of this is that some hydrogen that we strip off of plants and animals when we eat their fat is regular hydrogen. Most of it is, but some of it's this stuff called deuterium, which is heavy hydrogen, which basically clogs up our mitochondria. And this is why it's interesting. Again, we could do a whole podcast on this because it's so fascinating, but go listen to Luke Story's podcast with Dr. Boros, Boros, on deuterium, spelled Deuterium. People's mind will be blown. For example, I learned that the reason keto, again, this is just fascinating. The reason ketogenic diets are so good isn't just because you're avoiding carbs, and the reason carbs are bad not bad, but can be less than optimal for many people, is not because they're just carbs and because they spike insulin and all this stuff, but because they're higher in deuterium, so they're clogging our system up when we've changed our lifestyle. No sunlight, very little cold exposure, less movement, so we're not excreting as much of the deuterium as we should be, and we're being exposed to way more. Same thing for why grass-fed meat is better than grain-fed meat. Ethically is one thing, but grain-fed meat, because grains are higher in deuterium, like most carbohydrate foods, the grain-fed meat is much more loaded with deuterium as opposed to grass-fed meat. And same thing with like gluten isn't just bad because it's gluten. Many people are sensitive to it because it's loaded with deuterium, which affects it in such a way that our immune system often will jump on it if our immune systems don't work properly.
Whoa.
Yeah, all these things come from this podcast on deuterium. It's super foundational, so it has the ability to explain a lot of things. And the craziest part of it, I actually have a bottle of deuterium depleted water right here, which is unnaturally low in deuterium. But basically, they've been using this water, and people drink it like cancer patients, and their tumors actually shrink and shrink and shrink and disappear, because excess deuterium is ultimately what causes cells to become cancerous and very
Whoa.
big, because the deuterium clogs up the metabolic cycles in the mitochondria. Dude, this is so next level. You have no idea. I'm serious. Like,
I'm into it. I'm in.
I'm telling you, seriously, like deuterium, it's like carbon monoxide. It kills you because when you inhale carbon monoxide, it binds to the cycles in our metabolism that basically. So, in these cycles, they're supposed to, a molecule binds, unbinds, bind, unbinds, and it's like a bicycle wheel spinning, right? Molecules go like this. In biology, we learned that it's a cycle of a molecule, something attaches, takes something away, adds something, bump, 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 and by the end of the process, you have a different molecule. And so the thing is, when deuterium is involved or carbon monoxide, they bind and they stick. So these cycles don't keep moving, basically. So carbon monoxide kills you quickly because it sticks 150 times stronger than oxygen, if I'm not mistaken, or hydrogen. I don't exactly know where carbon monoxide causes the problem, but it's the same issue. It's called the kinetic isotope effect in physics. Just means how heavy it is and how hard it binds. But deuterium, this heavy hydrogen, binds about 7 times harder than regular hydrogen, which is our main fuel source. Like I said, when you eat fat or carbohydrates or any food, we strip the hydrogens off and react them with oxygen from the air to make water. So we actually make a liter of water in our body per day, and believe it or not, from the air and food we eat. Isn't that kind of cool? We actually make our own water.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
But so it's dope. But deuterium slows this process down. Again, it's totally normal to get a good amount of it, or at least a relatively normal amount of it. But now that we're eating a full deuterium-based diet year-round, we're getting way too much. So it's fascinating. And
so how does that? So does that tie back to the water and the shellfish?
Yeah. So municipal water is bad, not only because it has fluoride and all this stuff, but it's loaded. It's higher in deuterium because it's recycled. So we're basically like, yeah. And the cool thing about animals too, and when it goes to the seasonal diet, that's what I was getting at. Is that in the summer, it's okay to have fruit that's higher in deuterium. But if you think about fruit and when it's available, I learned this by living on this ranch that I mentioned to you up in Malibu. And the fruit trees, like, they would create fruit, and then it would be there for maybe 1 month, and it would all fall off. The animals, like, dude, there was a prickly pear cactus right, like, literally 10 feet from my front doorstep. And, dude, all the bees and the squirrels, it was like the shit, like the place to hang out for, like, 2 months. The bunny rabbits, the squirrels, actually not even 2 months. It was like a month. And then once they all died, dude, it was like one day I went away to San Diego and I came right back, and it was like quiet. Like every single ounce of fruit on that tree was gone. And it was gone for a year. So that's how fruit is naturally designed to be eaten.
Right.
Are not designed to be eaten at all. Like I challenge anyone to go to like a field of wild grasses and try to collect enough grain, like from the seeds of the wild grasses, to make anything, and like you're going to be highly disappointed. So it's fascinating. This guy, Dr. Barros, the researcher, he explains how really, and the paleo people are right to some extent, the reason why grains coincide with a lot of diseases beginning in the decline in human health isn't just because they're grains and they're full of anti-nutrients. The paleo people are very, very misguided on these things. It's because, not that they're bad people, they're great. I think mostly good people trying to spread a great message, but even if it's missing key things, but it's because grains are super high in deuterium. So we made it easier to get food by cultivating grains and using, instead of using rainwater, which is lower in deuterium, because when water evaporates into clouds, the water that evaporates is less deuterium because deuterium is heavier, so it doesn't evaporate as much.
Interesting.
Basically. But so rainwater is better to drink and to have our food watered with because it's natural. This is why, have you heard of dry farmed wine?
Yeah, I just had him on the podcast 2 episodes ago.
So this is I don't even know if they know this, but the dry farmed, well, not the company Dry Farms wine, but wine that is dry farmed is using just rainwater instead of irrigated water, because irrigated water is higher in deuterium because it's the water that's left on the ground or in the rivers. But deuterium, the water that evaporates, has less. So it's fascinating. It's really across the board, explains so many things. But so this is why, I mean, anyone, if you understand this, eat fruit, don't eat grains, eat fruit, maybe the small amount of the year that it would be naturally available from that plant. But if you're a human being, you're an obligate carnivore. And people don't like to hear that. Unless you live on the freaking equator and you have fruits coming all year round and you're in that strong sun naked, we are not meant to be eating fruit and carbohydrates year round. And if you do, your biologic function is going to be like down here, like way below where you can even see the screen compared to where it would be. Funny thing, like Dr. Barros, not that people should do this, and I'm not even sure if this is right. I got to talk with Dr. Kruse more about it this weekend. But Dr. Barros doesn't even drink water, this researcher, because his mitochondria, he's gotten them to be so good, lower in deuterium. So he can just drink, well, he said he maybe drinks a small cup of coffee made with this deuterium depleted water per day, small cup of coffee, but he actually drinks a little bit of olive oil. He only eats olive oil and bacon, more or less. And he makes his own water through oxygen and that hydrogen he's getting from the olive oil.
I have heard a lot of people, and this is I think I first heard it from Mark Sisson from Primal, and he was saying we're way overdoing the water. So it's not that shocking that someone else is saying that we can create our own, and if you're getting all the other nutrients needed and making your own water. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So I'm actually gonna, just for the purposes of time and keeping people interested, I'm not going to tell all the details of every step, but we've really crushed on one, the benefits of basically getting the sun exposure in the morning. 2, on what to eat. You want to basically be eating seasonal diet, so meat and fat based. Well, seafood instead of meat, I would say. So if you're a pescatarian, great. You don't need to touch meat. Just eat seafood. But fat is going to be, if you're not eating carbs, you still are going to need a fat source. And because people aren't eating, when we eat fish, we're not eating the whole brains. We're not eating the whole eyes where there's more fat, all the organs. We're not eating the liver and the heart and all that stuff. And I used to be a vegetarian. I'm a recovering vegetarian, I like to say.
Yeah.
So, and I've helped many to become on the path to recovering. Not that being a vegetarian is always bad, but it is not optimal for health if you're not in strong sunlight. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I have trouble with organ meats. So what do? Like I told you this morning, I eat sour cream because I love the fat, and butter you could eat if you like butter, but for me sour cream is easier to eat more of to get more fat calories and quench my hunger. But something like that I find to be great. It's lower in deuterium, food source, higher in fat. Some people it might be avocados, but again that's like a seasonal thing. Olive oil potentially. Bacon is a really great fat source. Sausage is awesome. Like I love sausage, so I eat it all the time. Because it's a form of meat that people know and like, which is way higher in fat. Like sausage and bacon are, I don't know if they're more fat than meat, but they're pretty much 50-50. Whereas if you eat like a steak, it's mostly just protein and not that much fat, unless you do what the paleo guys do, which is cover it in butter, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So, as far as deuterium goes. But then the key thing though is if you're eating seafood because you're pescatarian or something, you want to eat the skin, definitely, but like probably having some other form of fat to add, like avocado, olive oil, sour cream, or something that's a fatty source to get, because you're going to be hungry if you don't have it. If you're just eating protein, that's not optimal either.
Yeah.
So, but seafood's the key. And I didn't even touch on that, but the reason why, as far as it goes back to the light diet, getting away from the food, because that's like very emotional for people. Ignore all that stuff about if you only change one thing, drink spring water and add more seafood to whatever kind of diet you're eating, and ignore everything we just said if it doesn't make sense to you or if you don't understand it. But if you just add seafood to your diet, the seafood we integrate into our cell membranes and our skin, and more particularly around the myelin sheathing of our nerves, which is like what makes up our brain and our nervous system, obviously. And so this is why every study done on omega-3 DHA, the found in fish primarily and seafood, has shown tremendous cognitive benefits in childhood brain development, baby brain development, postpartum depression after a woman has a child, because she gives her DHA away to the kid, so she needs to be eating a lot of it. Like, humans are an obligate, actually, I shouldn't be saying obligate carnivore. We really are an obligate pescatarian. We're supposed to eat seafood primarily as our main food source, and that's actually how we evolved from ape to man. If one believes in evolution, the most solid evolutionary theory shows that we were in Africa, close to the coast in the East African Rift Zone. Changing climates led to a group of apes that basically ended up becoming a pescatarian that ate primarily shellfish, fish, seafood, that also lost all of its hair, so that with the fatty acids from that seafood, we could become basically a solar animal. That the reason we lost our hair was so we could get all this sunlight through our skin.
Right.
And so we concentrate this DHA, this molecule, magical molecule, in our eyes primarily, because what it does is it's cool when light hits it. There's this thing called the photoelectric effect that Albert Einstein won a Nobel Prize for, which basically says that when UV light or high energy light hits certain submolecules, it causes a flow of electrons on the surface, because that light has enough energy to push electrons off those molecules and create an electric current. So DHA actually apparently has this capability based on the research out there. And it makes sense then why we would be having the highest concentration in our retina, because light, like the process of seeing, is literally the process of light hitting molecules that turn to an electrical signal that our brain flips back upside down, integrates together, and then stimulates certain areas in the brain, creating an image that we feel. So
that's a perfect segue to take it back to take it back to the glasses, to take it back to light entering the eye, and how important it is for us to manage our light consumption. And so, you've given us some tools for that people can follow: spring water, sunlight, sunrise, seafood, but also you have these dope blue blocking glasses that are I just ordered a pair. You probably didn't even know this, but I ordered a pair like a week ago.
Sweet.
Because
we're pretty backed up, but they'll get to you soon.
That's what they said. I think it was a meal or someone was like, "Hey, thank you for ordering. We're backed up. Sorry to say." And I was like, "Well, hey, while I'm waiting, I'll just get Matt on the podcast."
Yeah. Thanks, man.
But that is something that we can also control. That doesn't have to do with stopping eating cupcakes, right?
So great. I'm glad you bring it up, because that's actually where I was headed anyway. So we'll skip 2 key steps, but it's not important because people are going to need to get the book to get all the details. Yeah. But basically, the step at this moment, it's step 5. So we went through 1 and 2, and 5 is watch the sunset, or at least try your best to be outdoors as the light is declining. So you get that, not just that turn on in the morning, but your brain goes, okay, it's time to get the melatonin secreting, because it's created and powered during the day in the sun, but we want it to be able to secrete it late in the evening, and that stimulus begins with that declining light and then darkness that follows. So you want to watch the sunset as much as, or as close as possible. I mean, it's easy here because I'm sitting at a friend's place in Cardiff, California. The Pacific Ocean is 200 yards that way, so I can watch it set on the ocean. It's amazing. But even if you can't, you try your best, like we mentioned with the sunrise, but just being outside if you can when it's setting. It's more important to get it to actually see the sun as it's rising and than it is for setting, but both are good. If you can do the set, it's also good, but not as important. So focus on sunrise.
Just real quick, explain why. Explain why.
Yeah. So because when you let me think about this, actually. I'm glad you asked. So when we wake up and we see the sun and it hits our eyes, it turns on all of these biological processes, and that's pretty much the key thing that you want. And so it stimulates all of our hormone creation and so on. So watching it set, I really shouldn't say it's not as important, because it's pretty important too, but it's just that the benefits of getting, especially in the modern world today, where most of us are just not getting enough sun. If you had to pick one of the two, you want that morning stimulus that we're missing, getting up earlier. Because also when you get the sunrise in the morning, you're going to be naturally, you start with an alarm if you have to, like 10, 15 minutes before it rises so you can get in the right spot, or even 20 minutes before it rises if you need to, or even 30 if you have to. But ideally you want to get to a point where you're waking up just before sunrise naturally. That's where we're supposed to be. But so yeah, by getting the sunrise, you're going to wake up a little earlier, and the effect is going to be as the evening comes on, people are going to be just naturally more tired. They should be, because one, they woke up a little earlier. Two, they got all the signals to start producing melatonin and all these other hormones.
Yeah.
So then night comes and you've got the best thing. So yeah, I would say just from my experience of doing it also, the effect of getting the rise is more like if I miss the sunrise, I'm just not the same. But if I miss the sunset, I'm still usually outdoors anyway as it's happening, so it's pretty good.
Makes sense. It makes sense because you have more ability to use that for the day during the work, and sleep is important. But if you had to pick one, cool. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and also there's like the ancient practice of sun gazing that I like to mention. Like some communities that I, like Dr. Kruse's community, for example, people there, or just various people doing this stuff, they'll like be out at the sunrise. But I found just actually looking directly at it for that first 10, 15 minutes when there's no UV, so you can look directly at it. It's just like a strong light. It has lots of benefits, and you could read in, like, people could just look up sun gazing and see like all the ancient Egyptian or Eastern
where you're kind of like you're on your knees, but you're seated back on your heels, and your toes are in the sand, and your palms are up, and you're like doing pranayama.
That's the most advanced form. Yeah, let's say I was just kind of even saying if you just – I mean, it's better like standing or doing a special form like a pose of some sort, but even just standing and looking right into it, I would consider that sun gazing. But yes, what you're talking about is really where you're going to get the maximum benefit by being fully grounded on the earth, getting the benefits. So people look into that so you can see this isn't bullshit. And the cool thing is like I try to do it every day, sunrise and sunset, because I get like a total of an hour almost of sun gazing directly in the sun. So that's fantastic. And it's like a meditation in a way. It's just time to zone in and just chill.
Well, man, I'll tell you, like the name of the company is Raw, not RAW, but RA as in.
Raw. I appreciate you picked up on that.
and so like, part of me wanted to get into, esoteric teaching, and why we say amen at grace is because we're praying to this, because we're praying to amen. And my in-laws didn't appreciate that when I told them that
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
The amen was a pagan nod to the sun god.
It is. Wait, yeah. That's so funny. It is a nod to the sun god.
Yeah.
And someone told me that. Someone I spoke with told me that that he thinks that's like a trick and that we're giving our power away to a false god. I do not know where that one's coming from, but it's just like so many different theories out there. But anyhow,
we could have gone real deep into the fact that each of the glasses have a name that's associated.
Dude, you're like the first person who has ever picked up on that, and like
seriously,
like first person who mentioned that, dude.
Really?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Nobody else brings that up?
Never. You're the first guy who ever mentioned me a whole year and 2 months later that I named all the glasses after the gods.
Amun, Osiris, Hathor, Bastet. I mean, like
Ta, and then there's Thutmose, which is the god, or not a god, but the king that conquered the biggest expanse of Egypt.
Yep.
But yeah, man, thank you for noticing.
Yeah, let me know when you drop the Thoth glasses and
dude, I need your naming advice. Actually, though, our new line that we're going to be releasing starting in January. It's not, it's just some new frame styles we're going to be releasing starting in around the beginning of January. I'm actually naming them after quantum biology researchers, so it'll be pretty interesting.
Nice.
Because I needed to change it up. But that'll be the cool thing is that every time someone reads about one of our styles, they'll actually be getting a little lesson about what's good. Anyhow, though, so continuing with step 5 of watch the sunset, the key thing about blue blockers is that you can actually slap them on and it almost stimulates an artificial sunset. Not the same as watching the colors, the blue level decrease. Because for those who don't know, the reason the sun's color changes and the reason why the sky is blue is because when the sun, I learned this recently, so I'm stoked about the fact that I can finally explain it. But basically, because some people say the sky's blue because the ocean's reflection, which isn't true. It's because when the sun's light, which is white, full spectrum, bright white, comes through the air, blue light frequencies have a higher frequency, I should say, and a shorter wavelength. So they're scattered more by oxygen molecules. And the best analogy I've thought of is if you imagine a pack of wolves running through a forest. If they're running slowly, they can probably like weave around the trees without being scattered much. But if the wolves are moving very quickly, they might kind of bounce into the trees. That's essentially what happens with the faster light molecule, or not the faster, but the higher energy light molecules. They hit the trees, aka the oxygen molecules, and they're scattered. So when the light actually hits your eye of the sun in the middle of the day, it's more yellow, because when you take out the blue from white, it appears more yellow, which is the interesting thing, that when you have one of our new day blue blocking lenses, when you take out the blue, you see a more yellow, as you can see right there,
right,
under the lens versus not under the lens. So it's actually very similar to the blue blocking glasses, but the reason why the sun gets more and more orange as it sets is because it has to pass through more atmosphere, so more of the blue is scattered out. As it goes into night, the lens gets the color gets more and more orange, which is why our day lenses fit more like the sun, and then the night lenses fit more like a sunset, because the only light that's remaining at sunset is the red and the orange and the yellow, more or less, which is the only light that these lenses let pass through. It's pretty fascinating. So by wearing blue blocking glasses, this is the best podcast I've ever done. It must be, I swear. It's really on fire today. But so basically, you're basically stimulating constant sunset, like the end of sunset, with all the lights you're exposed to, or like that all the light was just the equivalent of fire. Now, the problem is these don't cover your skin, so you want to like maybe wear a hat, wear like long sleeves and pants at night, because our skin now, it was shown in 2017 that our skin actually has the same receptor, melanopsin, as our eye, that makes blue light an issue, because it's what senses whether it's night or day. So it's actually best if we can cover our eyes and skin, like with a sweatshirt and stuff. So like I'm like all beachy right now with like, shorts and all this stuff. But at night, I like throw on a long sleeve shirt or a sweatshirt, and I won't wear pants because it's too hot. It would probably be beneficial if I did, but anyhow, yeah, the blue blockers are amazing. Like just for people who wonder why would I buy raw optics versus the cheap ones on Amazon, those are actually really effective too. The only issue is that they are very ugly. So the reason I made these, like out of necessity when I was trying to start a business, was the fact that I was going to high school parties and I looked fucking like a weirdo wearing some ugly like safety goggles, but I wasn't not going to wear them because like that's what I was doing and it was working. So just for one night, like it just wasn't worth it to have a shitty night of sleep compared to what I was now experiencing. If you haven't experienced good sleep yet, you're missing out. But the thing is, I started making them into attractive frames with the right technology. And then there's other companies out there that do the same thing. Don't get Swannies because they don't block enough blue and they don't block it all into the green range. There's 2 companies in Australia that do approximately the same thing. There was one other American company doing the night glasses called Carbon Shade, but they went out of business. I'm not sure why. I guess it was too much to handle. It's not an easy business to be in, but I'm doing fine. But anyhow, yeah. So then if you're in the US, you could go to the guys in Australia, but I think our frame styles are preferable. That's pretty much it.
I agree.
In the US, quality checked. And
I think I've owned 6 different pair of blue blocking glasses, like the original blue blockers.
Well, yeah, those are sunglasses, so nix those.
Right.
Never wear sunglasses. But yeah,
right. So I think I went through a couple of pair of those. And then I bought a pair of Swannies, and then we did a promotional blue blocking glasses as a giveaway through Natural Stacks a little while ago. And the like flat out, your frames are cooler than everybody else's.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
And the fact that you can get 2 different types that you can, because I made a distinction, allow me to explain this. You tell me if I got this right, but.
Yeah.
You can wear these during the day, but only if you're inside, like underneath lights and looking at screens. And then for the nighttime is the darker tinted ones that are more orange, more red, and you can wear those at night because again it mimics the nighttime, and so the nocturnal red is for nighttime, and then the daytime yellow. And the difference is 550 nanometers with the nocturnal red versus 450 nanometers with the daytime yellow. And they're killer frames, and they're named after friggin' Egyptian gods. Come on, man, they're dope.
I appreciate it. So what we'll do is we'll get like I don't know if you guys do this, but we can get like a discount code for you guys, for your audience, and you could put that in the show notes. Maybe it's natural stacks or whatever you guys would normally use.
Let's call it OPP.
OBB.
OPP, Optimal Performance Podcast.
OPP. Okay, yeah. So then, all right, guys, OPP, we can make that happen. And then you'll get, if you're a listener, you'll get 10% off. And maybe the show, they'll receive a cut to help support the show if they're into that.
Sweet.
That's typically what we do, but that way you're supporting everyone involved, but most importantly, you're supporting yourself. So it's pretty cool.
Okay.
And, we have some cool stuff coming in the new year as well. But the thing is, like I tell people, don't wait. I wouldn't wait, at least, because you're worth it. And if you don't think you're worth it, it's okay. But your family and your kids are worth it. So, that's
well
just
said.
Well
said. Well, I like to ask. I have to find a more streamlined way to present this. It's basically I'm going to ask you to finish this sentence based on, because we went wide, we went deep and wide in today's podcast.
Yeah.
That was really cool. So if you would, to kind of close out the show, if you could repeat or if you could finish this sentence, everyone should know that.
Everyone should know that. Oof. Can I take like 30 seconds?
Absolutely.
Sweet.
I'll edit this out anyway.
Yeah. No, I actually don't even think I don't like editing. I think people should hear this little. I'll edit this out, blah blah, because like it's more real. But oh wait, no, because you're gonna actually do the recording. But still, it's funny. If I was listening to a podcast and this part was still there, I'd be like, damn, these guys are funny.
Now it's being left. Now it's left in.
So exactly, sweet. I appreciate that because it's more real. But basically, everyone should know that I don't like the word should. To be honest, that's the first thing I think about. I don't like the word should, and I think no one should do anything. Now, if you change the sentence and you said everyone would benefit from knowing that the sun is actually good for you and the idea that it causes cancer is bullshit, that would be a good sentence. So I would cut the should, nix the should, and then say everyone would benefit from knowing that. Yeah.
Perfect. Well,
that's the revolution we're going to usher in. So
I love it, man. Matt, thank you so much for spending your afternoon. It's been a real pleasure, and I think that I'd love to have you come back on because there's still like 12 questions that I wasn't able to ask, I'll let you go. You went for it, and you've not only given us a lot of ideas for things that we can control for, that things that we can do in our everyday life, but you've also added tons of insight into kind of how our bodies work and a lot of information that's not common knowledge. And that is what this podcast is all about. It's about performance and opening up our minds and our hearts to learn new things. And you've killed it today, and I really appreciate you being
pretty simple.
On the podcast.
We breathe oxygen from the air. We eat hydrogen from plants. We make the water and have energy as a result that's released. And then we take sunlight into that water and further charge up the water to carry out all kinds of processes. And it's super dope. And then we feel amazing and we live well. And it's just so cool. When you're in the sun, life is so beautiful. When you're not, life is really dark, literally. So I look forward to coming to Seattle and hanging out sometime. And it would be sweet to do a giveaway. I would totally do a Raw Optics giveaway for you guys. So if you want to do that, we can definitely get some glasses pulled out and shipped to you pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, after we turn this off, we'll get those details sorted out, because I know people are going to be excited about it.
Done deal, dude.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Matt.
No, stoked. Take it easy. See you next time.